The alien woman accidentally entered the human soldier's room. Now she doesn't want to leave. The corridor lights of the Joint Species Military Station glowed a soft blue, meant to calm visitors from dozens of worlds. For Sayla, they only made her head ache. The meeting with the human officers and her own superiors had lasted far too long. Voices had risen, translators had lagged, and every sharp tone felt like a blade against her senses. Sayla moved quickly, her long steps silent against the polished floor. Her species was not built for conflict. Loud rooms, tight spaces, and constant tension drained her strength. She just wanted to return to her assigned quarters, lock the door, and let her breathing slow. The problem was that the station had been expanded too many times. Corridors curved in strange ways, signs changed languages every few meters, and rooms often looked exactly the same. Sayla followed what she thought was the correct path, counting turns in her mind like she had been taught. Left, right, down one corridor, another left. Her fingers brushed a door panel. The symbol beside it looked familiar enough. Without thinking further, she pressed it. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Sayla stepped inside and froze. This was not her room. The air smelled different, metal cleaning solvent and something warm underneath it. The space was smaller than her quarters, but it felt solid, functional. A single bed bolted to the wall, a narrow desk covered in neatly stacked equipment, and weapons mounted with precise spacing. Everything had a place. A human room, her pulse spiked. Humans were not enemies, but they were soldiers, dangerous ones. Stories about them filled her childhood, deathworlders with explosive tempers and unstoppable violence. Sayla's breath caught as she realized her mistake. She turned to leave. "Hey!" The voice came from behind her, calm but firm. Sayla flinched and spun around. A human stood near the far wall, just stepping away from a locker. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a simple duty uniform. No helmet, no weapon in his hands, dark hair, tired eyes, and a thin scar running along his jaw. He looked surprised, not angry. "You lost?" he asked. Sayla's translator took a second too long to catch up. In that moment, fear flooded her system. Her species reacted badly to stress. Her knees weakened, and she gripped the edge of the doorframe to stay upright. I am sorry," she said quickly. "This was an error. I will leave immediately." The human raised both hands slowly, palms open. "Easy, you're not in trouble," he said. "Doors get mixed up all the time on this station." That was not what she expected. Sayla hesitated. The door was still open behind her, but the corridor suddenly felt louder, harsher than the quiet room. Her vision blurred at the edges. The human noticed. "You okay?" he asked, stepping closer, but stopping several feet away, as if aware of how imposing he might seem. "I need a moment," Sayla admitted, ashamed of the weakness in her voice. "That's fine," he said immediately. "You can sit if you want." He gestured toward the small chair by the desk. No command, no pressure. Sayla looked at the chair, then at him. Slowly, she moved inside and sat down, folding her hands together to stop them from shaking. The door slid shut behind her with a soft click. The human waited until she settled before speaking again. "I'm Ethan," he said. "Human infantry." "Sayla," she replied. "Cultural envoy." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Didn't expect an envoy in my room," he admitted, a hint of dry humor in his voice. "But I guess that's my fault for not checking the corridor map." Sayla studied him carefully. He did not loom, he did not block the door. He leaned against the opposite wall, keeping distance. "You are not angry," she said. Ethan shrugged. "You walked into the wrong room, happens." On Sayla's world, walking uninvited into a soldier's space could mean imprisonment, or worse. She struggled to understand his reaction. "I was told humans value strict order," she said carefully. "We do," Ethan replied, "but we also understand mistakes." That answer stayed with her. Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, just quiet. Sayla's breathing slowly returned to normal. The headache eased. She realized something unsettling. She felt safe. Alarms suddenly echoed faintly through the station, distant but sharp. Sayla stiffened. Ethan tilted his head, listening. "Probably a drill," he said. "They've been running a lot of them lately." Sayla swallowed. "Crowded areas during alarms cause panic responses in my people." Ethan considered that. Then he said, "You can stay here until it passes." Her eyes widened. "I cannot impose." "You're not," he said simply. "I'll file it as a misunderstanding if anyone asks." No threat. No expectation of reward. Sayla nodded slowly. Minutes passed. Ethan returned to his locker and began cleaning a piece of equipment with practiced motions. His movements were careful, almost gentle. She noticed old scars along his arms, pale against his skin. "You have fought many battles," she said softly. "Too many," he replied without looking up. "Why continue?" He paused, then answered honestly. "Because someone has to stand there when things go bad." That answer carried weight. The alarms faded. The station returned to its usual hum. Sayla knew she should leave now. Protocol demanded it, yet she remained seated. "I will depart shortly," she said, though she made no move to stand. "No rush," Ethan said. "I'm off duty for another hour." Her communicator buzzed. A message from her aide asking about her location. Sayla stared at it, then muted the device. Ethan noticed but did not comment. "You are different from what we were taught," Sayla said at last. He smiled faintly. "We get that a lot. Your people are feared," she continued, "even by those who ally with you." "That fair?" he asked. Sayla considered him, the calm voice, the open posture, the willingness to protect without force. "No," she admitted. A knock sounded at the door. Both of them turned. "Private Cross," came a voice from outside. "You got a report pending." Ethan walked to the door and opened it just enough to step into the corridor, blocking the view inside. "I'll handle it later," he said. "I'm busy." "With what?" the voice asked. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Diplomatic duty." The door closed. Sayla stared at him. "You protected my presence," she said. "Didn't feel right throwing you back into a mess," he replied. Something inside Sayla shifted. A small, fragile trust took root. She stood slowly. "I should leave before this causes issues." Ethan nodded. "Whenever you're ready." She walked to the door, then stopped. Her hand hovered over the panel. "May I return later?" she asked quietly. "Not by mistake." Ethan met her eyes. "Doors unlocked when I'm here." Sayla inclined her head, a gesture of deep respect among her people. She stepped into the corridor, the door sliding shut behind her. For the first time since arriving on the station, Sayla felt something unexpected. She was already thinking about when she could come back. Sayla did not return to her own quarters right away. She walked the corridor slowly, letting the station's noise wash over her. Normally, the hum of engines and distant voices made her uncomfortable. Now, compared to the quiet room she had just left, everything felt too sharp, too fast. Her steps slowed until she finally stopped near a viewport that looked out into open space. Stars drifted past like cold fire. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, tall, slender skin marked with the faint color patterns of her people. Her breathing was steady, but her thoughts were not. Again and again, her mind returned to the human soldier's room, to the calm in his voice, to the way he had stood between her and the corridor without being asked. Sayla touched the communicator at her wrist. Messages waited. Questions, orders. She closed the interface. Back in his quarters, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, elbows resting on his knees. The room felt different now that she was gone. Quieter, but also emptier in a way he did not expect. He told himself it was nothing. Just a strange interaction on a strange station. Still, he found himself replaying the look on her face when she realized he was not angry. He shook his head and stood, returning to his routine. Gear inspection, report logging, simple things that kept his mind steady. Yet every few minutes his eyes drifted to the door. Sayla returned to her quarters later that cycle. The room greeted her with familiar lighting and carefully controlled silence. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt restless. She sat on the sleeping platform and folded her legs beneath her, closing her eyes. Her people believed in careful reflection. Emotional impulses, they taught, could lead to mistakes. Yet the more she tried to calm her thoughts, the more clearly she remembered Ethan's quiet patience. Humans were supposed to be unpredictable, dangerous, but he had been precise in a different way, measured, aware, controlled. A chime sounded at her door. Sayla opened her eyes sharply. No one ever visited without warning. She rose and approached the door, checking the display. Station escort unit. Her chest tightened. She opened the door just enough to speak. "Yes." "Envoy Sayla," the officer said politely. "Your superiors have requested your presence." "Immediately," Sayla nodded. "I will comply." As she followed the escort through the corridors, she sensed eyes on her. Word traveled fast on stations like this. An alien envoy leaving a human soldier's room was not a small thing. The meeting chamber felt colder than before. Her people sat on one side, rigid and formal. Human officers occupied the other, their expressions neutral but alert. "You deviated from your assigned route," one of Sayla's elders said without preamble. "Explain." Sayla chose her words carefully. I entered an incorrect corridor and took refuge in a private space during a station alert. A human private space, another elder added sharply. Yes, murmurs rippled through the chamber. Did the human detain you? The elder asked. No. Did he threaten you? No. Did he attempt influence? Sayla lifted her head. No, he offered safety. The humans exchanged brief glances. One of the senior officers leaned forward. Private Cross has a clean record, she said. Decorated, disciplined, known for restraint. That word again, restraint. The elders were unconvinced. Perception matters, one said. This incident could be misinterpreted. I understand, Sayla replied, but the truth matters more. The meeting ended with a warning, no official punishment. But clear instructions, avoid unnecessary interaction with human military personnel. Sayla accepted the decision outwardly. Inside, something twisted. That cycle, Ethan received a brief notice on his terminal, a reminder about cross-species protocol, no accusation, just a note. He exhaled slowly and closed the file. He told himself it was better this way, fewer complications. Yet when he lay down to rest, sleep did not come easily. 2 cycles passed. Sayla performed her duties with precision. She attended briefings, reviewed cultural exchange data, and drafted reports meant to ease centuries of mistrust. She did her work well. But every time she passed the corridor near Ethan's quarters, her steps slowed. On the 3rd cycle, a sudden surge hit the station. Not an alarm, something worse. The lights flickered. Gravity stuttered for half a second, enough to send several beings stumbling. Sayla grabbed a railing, her heart racing. Her species reacted poorly to sudden physical disruption. Panic clawed at her control. Voices rose. Systems announcements overlapped in multiple languages. Sayla's vision narrowed. Without thinking, she moved. Her feet carried her through the maze of corridors, memory guiding her more than logic. When she reached the familiar door, she pressed the panel. It slid open. Ethan was inside, pulling on his boots. He looked up sharply, then relaxed when he saw her. You okay? He asked immediately. Sayla nodded, though her hands trembled. The surge, I could not remain there. Come in, he said, stepping aside. She entered and sat down, shoulders sagging as the door closed behind her. The noise outside dulled instantly. Ethan activated a small privacy field, standard issue but rarely used. The room became even quieter. Engineering issue, he said. They'll fix it. Sayla focused on her breathing. Ethan crouched near the desk, making himself smaller, less threatening. He handed her a sealed container. Water, he said. Cold. She accepted it with both hands. Thank you. Minutes passed in silence. This time it was comfortable, familiar. You returned, Ethan said gently. Yes, Sayla replied. By choice. He nodded, not questioning it. She watched him as he finished preparing his gear. Every movement was efficient but never rushed. She noticed how he checked each clasp twice, how he paused before standing fully upright as if listening to his body. You carry pain, she said suddenly. Ethan blinked. What? Your movements, she explained. They are careful, not weak, aware. He considered that. Yeah. Old injuries. Yet you continue. Someone has to, he said again. Sayla tilted her head. You repeat that phrase, he smiled faintly. Guess I believe it. The station system stabilized. An all-clear message echoed softly through the corridor. Sayla did not move. You can stay, Ethan said before she could speak. If you want. She looked at him. Does this trouble you? No, he answered honestly. Does it trouble you? She searched herself. The answer came easily. No. Later, a message arrived on Sayla's communicator. Another summons. She silenced it. Ethan noticed. That okay? They will wait, she said. He did not ask more. That cycle, Sayla learned more about humans than any report could teach. Ethan spoke of Earth's oceans, of storms and quiet nights, of comrades lost and promises kept. He did not glorify violence. He spoke of it as something endured, not celebrated. In return, Sayla shared stories of her people's sensitivity, of cities designed for calm, of songs sung to steady hearts. When she finally stood to leave, it felt harder than before. I will return, she said. Ethan nodded. I know. As she stepped into the corridor, Sayla realized the truth she had been avoiding. She did not just feel safe in the human soldier's room. She felt understood. And that made her want to stay even more. The tension on the station did not fade after the system surge. It changed shape. Where there had once been polite distance between species, there was now quiet observation. Whispers followed Sayla through corridors. Human soldiers noticed it too, how officers paused a second longer when they saw her, how security feeds lingered. Sayla felt it in her chest, a low pressure that never fully eased. She still went to Ethan's room, not constantly, not carelessly. But when the station grew too loud, when meetings turned sharp, when fear crept too close to the surface, she found her way there. Each time Ethan welcomed her without comment. They did not touch. They did not cross boundaries. They simply shared space. And somehow that was enough to worry everyone else. Ethan was tightening the straps on his armor when the alert came through his wrist display. Not a drill, not a system issue. Unauthorized movement, restricted sector. He swore softly under his breath. Sayla sat on the chair by the desk, reading a human data slate. She looked up at the change in his posture immediately. "What is wrong?" she asked. "Security breach," Ethan said. "Stay here." Her skin patterns darkened slightly, a sign of concern. "Is the station in danger?" "Maybe," he said honestly, "but this room is safer than most places right now." He moved to the door and paused, glancing back at her. "Lock it if I don't come back in 10 minutes." Her eyes widened. "You are leaving." "I have to," he said. "That's my job." She stood. "Then I will go with you." "No," he said quickly. "Sayla, I will not be alone in panic again," she said, voice steady but firm. "And I will not hide while you face danger." Ethan studied her. He saw fear, yes, but also resolve, not reckless, chosen. "Stay behind me," he said at last. They moved through the corridors together, Ethan leading, Sayla matching his pace despite the tension radiating through the station. Emergency lights bathed the hallways in red. They turned a corner and nearly collided with a group of armed station security, non-human, heavily armored. The leader raised a weapon slightly when he saw Sayla. "There she is," the officer said. "Envoy Sayla, you are to come with us." Ethan stepped forward without thinking, placing himself between Sayla and the raised weapon. "She's under my protection," he said calmly. "That is not authorized," the officer replied. "Step aside, human." Sayla felt her chest tighten. This was how things went wrong. This was how violence started. "She is not a threat," Ethan said. "Lower your weapon." The officer's grip tightened instead. From behind them, more footsteps echoed. A different sound, heavier. Human soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor, weapons ready but not raised. "Stand down," one of them called out. "Nobody wants this." For a long moment, no one moved. Sayla made a decision. She stepped forward, placing a hand lightly against Ethan's arm, not to push him aside, just enough to be seen. "I will go willingly," she said, voice carrying through the corridor, "but I will not be taken like a criminal." The security officer hesitated. "You are under investigation." "For what?" she asked. "For compromising protocol," he said. "For influencing human military personnel." Ethan let out a short, humorless breath. "That's a stretch." Sayla lifted her chin. "I requested safety. He provided it. That is not influence. That is kindness." The corridor was silent. At last, a command came through the security officer's communicator. His posture stiffened. "Escort only," he said reluctantly. "No restraints." They led Sayla away. Ethan did not follow. Orders held him in place. He watched her disappear down the corridor, her back straight, her steps steady. Something cold settled in his stomach. The council chamber was fuller than before. Not just elders and officers, but observers, analysts, media liaisons. This time there was no pretense of a simple review. "Envoy Sayla," an elder began, "you have repeatedly violated advisory guidance." "I followed my conscience," Sayla replied. A human officer spoke next. "Private Cross has shown unusual behavior patterns." Ethan stood at the edge of the room, hands clasped behind his back. He did not speak unless addressed. "He allowed an unauthorized alien into restricted space," the officer continued. "Multiple times." "He allowed me safety," Sayla corrected. "Intent does not erase risk," an elder said sharply. Sayla's skin patterns shifted, showing controlled distress. "Your fear of humans blinds you." A ripple went through the chamber. "You forget your place," the elder snapped. "No," Sayla said quietly. "I remember it. I am here to understand, and I have." She turned slightly, gesturing toward Ethan. "You taught me humans are dangerous because you endure pain without surrender, because you protect even when it costs you, because you choose restraint when force would be easier." Murmurs spread. "That is not the narrative," one official said. "Then the narrative is wrong," Sayla replied. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He had faced enemy fire without flinching. This was worse. An alert suddenly cut through the chamber. Internal threat detected. Hostile actors moving toward council sector. The lights dimmed. Security shouted. Panic surged. Ethan moved instantly, stepping in front of Sayla without thinking. "Stay close," he said. This time no one stopped him. Explosions echoed distantly, not blasts, but concussive charges meant to disable systems. The extremist faction that hated cooperation had chosen this moment. Armed figures burst into the chamber. Ethan stood his ground. He did not shout, he did not threaten, he simply planted his feet. "Over my body," he said. The attackers hesitated. They had expected fear, chaos, easy control. Instead, they saw a human soldier who did not raise his weapon, who did not back down, who placed himself between violence and someone who could not fight. Other humans moved in beside him. Non-humans, too. A line formed without orders. Sayla watched, heart pounding. This was humanity, not loud, not cruel, unmovable. Security forces arrived moments later. The attackers were subdued with minimal force. No deaths, no bloodshed. When it was over, the chamber was silent except for heavy breathing. Ethan finally lowered his arms. Sayla realized she was shaking. The council reconvened hours later. This time the tone was different. "What happened today," one elder said slowly, "will be remembered." Sayla met their gaze. "So will what nearly happened." A human general spoke next. Private Cross acted according to the highest standards of conduct. No one argued. The elder turned to Sayla. "You wish to remain near this human?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Why?" Sayla answered simply. "Because when fear arrives, he does not become it." The chamber fell quiet. Permission was not granted yet, but it was no longer denied. Later, in the quiet of Ethan's room, Sayla sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted. "You stood alone," she said softly. Ethan leaned against the wall. "Didn't feel alone." She looked at him. "I am afraid." "I know," he said. "But I will not leave," she added. He nodded. "Then neither will I outside." The station slowly returned to normal. Inside that small room, something had changed forever. The station did not forget what happened in the council chamber. For days after the attack, security patrols doubled. Checkpoints appeared where there had once been open corridors. Conversations lowered when Sayla passed. Some looks held respect. Others held fear. Ethan felt it too. Humans were used to being watched, but this was different. This was not about threat assessments or battle readiness. This was about trust, and trust was fragile. Sayla stayed mostly in Ethan's quarters now, not because she was ordered to, but because the station felt wrong everywhere else. The room had become a quiet island in a restless place. Ethan accepted it without comment. That morning, Sayla stood near the viewport inside his room, watching ships drift past the station. Her skin patterns were calm but muted, a sign of deep thought. "You should not be here," she said suddenly. Ethan looked up from the table where he was repairing a piece of gear. "You mean right now? You risk consequences," she continued. "Because of me." He set the tool down carefully. "I risk consequences every time I put the uniform on. This is different." "Yeah," he said. "It is." She turned to face him. "Why do you accept it?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Because it's the right thing." "That answer troubles my people," Sayla said. "It doesn't trouble me," he replied. A message arrived on Ethan's wrist display. Priority level high, command channel. He frowned slightly. "I've been summoned." Sayla's chest tightened. "Because of me." "Because of us," Ethan corrected gently. They walked together through the corridors, side by side but not touching. Soldiers saluted Ethan. Some glanced at Sayla with curiosity rather than suspicion now. The command briefing room was smaller than the council chamber, but no less heavy with expectation. A human general stood near the center. Beside her were two representatives from Sayla's species. "Private Cross," the general said. "Envoy Sayla." They both acknowledged her. "What happened during the attack changed several things," the general continued, "for better and worse." Sayla braced herself. "There are groups who believe cooperation is weakness," the general said. "They see you, Envoy, as a symbol, and you, Private, as a vulnerability." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I can handle threats." "This is not about your ability," the general replied. "It's about risk." One of Sayla's elders spoke next. "Our people are divided. Some see the human as a protector, others see him as a danger to your objectivity." Sayla stepped forward. "My objectivity has improved." The elder's eyes narrowed. "You believe that?" "I know it," Sayla said, "because I have seen truth, not stories." Silence followed. The general folded her hands. "There is a proposal." Ethan straightened. "A joint assignment," she said. "A controlled environment, limited exposure, transparency." Sayla understood immediately. "You wish to test us?" Yes, the general said, and to protect you both. Ethan glanced at Sayla. What kind of assignment? External, the general replied. Human-controlled outpost near the border, low population, minimal media presence. Sayla felt a flicker of fear. Open space, fewer people, fewer rules, but also fewer eyes. I will go, she said. Ethan turned to her sharply. You don't have to. I choose to, Sayla said firmly. The elder hesitated, then nodded once. Very well. The transport departed the station 12 hours later. Sayla stood at the viewport of the shuttle, watching the massive structure shrink behind them. Her home species, Elder, sat across from her in silence, eyes closed in meditation. Ethan sat strapped into a seat nearby, already in mission mode. The outpost was small, human-built. Functional, set against a backdrop of a quiet star and a thin ring of dust. It felt isolated but not hostile. When they disembarked, the air was still. This place is calm, Sayla said. That's why they picked it, Ethan replied. The first days passed without incident. Sayla observed human routines closely. How soldiers shared meals. How they argued quietly, then laughed. How they checked on one another without being asked. She wrote reports late into the night, her words careful but honest. Ethan escorted her when she needed space outside the outpost. Not because she asked, but because he understood. Then the messages started. Anonymous warnings, threat indicators, movement on long-range sensors. Nothing solid enough to act on, enough to raise concern. One night, Sayla woke suddenly. The outpost lights were dimmed. Emergency protocol. She sat up, heart racing. A soft knock came at the door. Sayla, Ethan's voice, calm, steady. We need to move. She followed him through a side corridor into a reinforced shelter beneath the outpost. A few other personnel were already there. What is happening? She asked. Unknown contacts, Ethan said. Could be nothing, could be trouble. The shelter door sealed, minutes stretched. Then the sensors screamed. Explosions rocked the surface, not direct hits but warning shots. The outpost shook. Sayla felt panic rise, sharp and overwhelming. Her species was not built for this. Ethan noticed instantly. Look at me, he said softly, crouching in front of her. Breathe with me. She tried, failed. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Ethan removed his helmet and set it aside. Slowly, carefully, he placed his gloved hand on the floor between them, not touching her, just present. I'm here, he said. You're safe. Her breathing slowly synced with his. Above them, voices shouted. Orders were given, defenses activated, then silence. Minutes later, the all-clear sounded. The attackers had withdrawn, no casualties, minimal damage. When the shelter opened, the outpost felt different. The personnel looked at Sayla with something new in their eyes, respect. That night, Sayla stood alone outside, watching the dust ring drift lazily in the distance. Ethan joined her, hands resting on the railing. You stayed calm, he said. She shook her head. I was not calm. I was afraid. And you stayed anyway, Ethan said. That counts, she looked at him. Your people believe courage is action. Yeah, my people believe courage is endurance, she said. Tonight I learned they are the same. Ethan smiled. The next report Sayla sent to the council was different from all the others. She did not speak of treaties or statistics. She spoke of a human soldier who stood quietly between fear and those who could not fight. She spoke of a species that chose restraint even when power was unquestioned. When the reply came days later, it was brief. Continue observation, reevaluate assumptions. Sayla read it twice. Then she looked at Ethan, standing nearby, checking perimeter sensors with patient focus. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe the truth. She was not merely staying in a human soldier's space anymore. She was standing beside him, and the galaxy was beginning to notice. The outpost changed after the attack. Not in structure, not in defenses, but in atmosphere. The quiet felt earned now, not empty. The people stationed there moved with a shared understanding, as if something unspoken had settled between them. Sayla felt it most clearly. She was no longer watched with suspicion. Instead, soldiers nodded when they passed her. Some offered short greetings. Others simply made space. An instinctive courtesy she had learned was deeply human. Ethan noticed, too. She's one of us now, one of the engineers muttered one day, not unkindly. Ethan did not correct him. Days turned into weeks. Reports were sent. Data compiled. Yet Sayla's most important observations never fit neatly into official language. How did one explain trust built without words? How did one measure safety that came from presence alone? She often sat near the outpost's outer viewport, recording thoughts that might never be transmitted. Ethan sometimes joined her, saying little, just sharing the silence. One cycle, a message arrived from the council. Not an order, a request. Sayla read it slowly, then read it again. Her hands were steady, but her chest felt tight. Ethan noticed immediately. That bad? She shook her head. That important? She handed him the tablet. The council requested her return, not as an envoy under supervision, as a speaker. A witness? They want you to testify, Ethan said quietly. Yes. When? Soon. They stood in silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. You don't have to go alone, she looked at him sharply. They would never allow. They might, he said. After everything. The transport back to the main station was smaller than the one that brought them to the outpost. Only essential personnel. Fewer eyes, fewer guards. Sayla watched the stars stretch as they entered jump transit. Ethan sat across from her, calm as ever, hands resting loosely on his knees. You're afraid, he said. Yes, she admitted. That's okay. You are not, she asked. He considered. I am just used to carrying it. That answer stayed with her. The station loomed ahead, larger than she remembered. The same corridors, the same lights, yet everything felt different now. Word of their arrival spread quickly. The chamber was full when Sayla stepped inside, more than before, delegates from multiple species, military leaders. Civil observers. Ethan stood a short distance behind her, not looming, not hiding. The council elder who had once questioned her so sharply rose. Envoy Sayla, he said, you may speak. She took a breath. I was sent to observe humanity, she began, to measure their danger. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. I did that, she continued, and I discovered the truth. She turned slightly, gesturing toward Ethan without naming him. Humans are dangerous, she said calmly, not because they seek domination, but because they endure what would break others. Silence fell. They live on a world that teaches them pain from birth. They learn early that survival is not guaranteed, and yet when given power, they choose restraint. She met the eyes of her own elders. I was not influenced. I was informed. A voice rose from the chamber. One soldier does not represent a species, Sayla nodded. That is correct. She looked back at Ethan, then at the crowd. He represents a choice, and I have seen that choice repeated again and again. She spoke of the council chamber attack, of the outpost, of the way humans place themselves between fear and the vulnerable without being asked. She did not exaggerate. She did not plead. She simply told the truth. When she finished, the chamber remained quiet for a long moment. Then a human general stood. Private Cross, she said, step forward. Ethan did. Do you deny any of this? She asked. No, ma'am, he replied. Did you act for reward? No. For recognition? No. Then why? She asked. Ethan hesitated, then answered simply. Because she needed safety. That was all. Something shifted in the room. The elder rose again, more slowly this time. Envoy Sayla, he said, what do you request? She had thought about this moment for many cycles. I request permanent joint assignment, she said. Not under restriction, not under suspicion, I choose to remain among humans. Gasps followed. And you, the elder said, turning to Ethan, what do you request? Ethan glanced at Sayla, then back at the council. I request permission to continue serving, he said. As I always have. The elder closed his eyes briefly. Then it is decided, he said at last. Envoy Sayla will remain as a permanent liaison under human protection. No one objected. Later, as the chamber emptied, Sayla finally allowed herself to sit. The weight of the moment pressed down on her. Ethan crouched nearby. You okay? She nodded, then shook her head, then laughed softly, a sound rare for her people. I stayed, she said. You did, he agreed. Back in Ethan's quarters, the same small room where it had all begun, Sayla stood in the doorway once more. The door was open. She stepped inside without hesitation. I did not enter by accident this time, she said. Ethan smiled faintly. I noticed. She moved to the chair by the desk, the place that had become familiar, safe. You know, she said thoughtfully, my people will study this moment for generations. Yeah, Ethan said. What'll they say? That a misunderstanding changed the galaxy. He considered that. All because you walked into the wrong room. She looked at him, eyes calm, certain. No, she said, because you did not force me to leave. Outside the viewport, ships moved through space, carrying news of a small, quiet choice that had rippled outward. The records would mark treaties signed, alliances strengthened, conflicts avoided, but none of them would record the truth as Sayla knew it, that the galaxy did not change because of power. It changed because a human soldier opened a door and chose kindness.